Hello, everyone. This is Claudia, and we're on week Spirit. Spirit Week makes it sound like a high school rah-rah thing, but so when we started talking about doing an Elements of Magic class online, but Caledon, Raven, and I have taught Elements in person numerous times in various other people and different situations and taken it from various people at various situations, but had not really ever attempted to do this online before. And when we talked about that, one of the things that came up was that when you do Elements of Magic in person, either at a witch camp, so it's all week long, it's 5 days, 4 days, 6 days, whatever it is, or if you're doing it in a local community, so every Thursday night you get together, or even over a long weekend. Usually what happens at the end is that the students get together and create a ritual, so that they get a chance to use and try out some of the skills and some of the things, and the ritual can be anything. I've seen it be a ritual about elements. I've seen it be a ritual that was connected with the season of the year or the wheel of the year at that time. I've seen it be a healing ritual because it turned out that there was somebody in the group that needed work. Each group, each elements class kind of brings their own, but it's specifically to give people practice. And that we talked about, ways that we can sort of facilitate that in the larger group and ask you guys to go out on your own, but you're not a cohesive, connected group physically, and so you can't get together and do a ritual. But I wanted to talk about some of the pieces of ritual that are important so that you can take some of this work and in your own communities and with your own magical groups and the people that you want to work with or can work with, you can sort of bring some of the things together. Certainly, we talked early on at the first week about the importance of grounding, and then you cast the circle, and then you call the elements. One thing that I particularly bring to my circles is that after we call center or spirit, and depending on the ritual and who I'm with and their traditions, we often call above and below, and between or center. The next thing that the circles that I'm involved with is we call time. And Raven and I teach a course on time magic, and there's explanations about why we do that. But we talked about when you stand in a circle and you call the elements, you're in a two-dimensional space. And then when you call above and below, you're in the three-dimensional space. And then when you call time, you add in the fourth dimension. And what I find what this does is that it locks it in so that the magics that you're then doing can connect truly between the worlds and for all the worlds. And, we don't say be here, we say be here now. Because if we're not connecting time into the equation, then there's a piece around both earth magics, the magics that we do, the practical magics to create things and make things happen, and synchronicity and all of that. But there's also, if we're working magics in other realms, connecting in with them requires that we connect in with their time sense too. So it's a very little tiny taste of what that's like. I'm probably going to post a couple of things that are actually from the time class to sort of whet your interest, possibly. I think we're teaching that again in the spring. But, it's by no means a universal thing, but it's something that a decent number of people in reclaiming are starting to do. And most of the feedback I get is, wow, we called time into our meeting or into our sacred circle, and things clicked and moved along in a way that they hadn't before. So there's that. And like I said, I'll post a couple things. So after time, usually that's when we start calling in the mysterious ones, the entities, the deities. Depending on the group and their affiliations and connections, often the Fae are called, often spirits of the land, often ancestors and descendants. And then, depending on what the work is and the group, you may call in personal allies. And then usually a deity or 2, 3 deities that are connected to the work that you're planning on doing. There is an unfortunate thing that sometimes happens, especially when groups that they don't know each other very well, or they get together and you start giving out roles to people because you want to be inclusive, and so somebody calls earth in one way and somebody calls air in another, and the casting doesn't have anything to do with the grounding, and the grounding doesn't have anything to do with the intention, and the deities don't actually fit together. And one of my teachers talked about, like, your rituals should be like a well-orchestrated party, like a dinner party that you've planned from start to finish, and the first course should have something to do with the second course, and you should seek people who actually get along, like Loki and Peli together is a really bad combination that's going to turn bad things happening. You want to call in deity, and you want to call to the elements in ways that are interesting and enticing to them, and you want to call them in for work that they actually have some interest in doing and have some facility in doing. The fact that one person happens to have a knowledge or a background of this one deity, if they don't really fit with the ritual, that's nice, but it doesn't really fit with the ritual. And being mindful of, who you're sitting next to each other at the dinner party, and, are you feeding them the right things, and have you set the table nicely, and have you brought flowers, and is everybody comfortable, and is it a really long dinner party and people are bored, or is it going too fast and we're not enough to eat? It's a nice analogy, actually, I think. And, when rituals go well, it's often because, there's certainly spontaneous, co-created, on-the-dot rituals that can be amazing, or complete flubs, and there are painstakingly thought-out rituals that can be awesome or go flub. I think it has more to do with the care which you put into the thought process around what you're doing, and does everybody understand what you're doing? Does everybody have the intention and have buy-in for the intention, and get how their part, whether it is purely participatory and supportive, or whether they have a active role to play in speaking or doing in the ritual. Do they all know what they're doing, when they're doing, and why? I think that's really important. And so, there are people who come to reclaiming or pagan rituals with the concept that it's all an analogy, that it's somehow basically psychological, and that works for people. I think it shortchanges you. I think you miss a lot, but if that's where you're at, that's fine. I think there's a lot more going on, and it is a little dangerous to think it's all a metaphor, because that can bite you in the ass sometimes. If you call a deity thinking you've called a metaphor and the deity expects things from you. Either it won't work at all, or it will work in ways you didn't anticipate. I think Pomegranate Doyle taught me to staying, an attitude of gratitude is never just a platitude, which I love. I think that comes from Girl Scouts or something ridiculous. But being in a space of gratitude and welcoming and thankfulness for any entities that you invite in and for what they have to bring, and then actually listening to them and honoring them is important, and it will bring something magical to your. It will change a nice theatrical performance into a powerful, magical, transformative experience. And there's a world of difference between the two of those. And then, there's the body of the work. There's whatever it is that you want to accomplish. You've hopefully thought about what your intention is. We want to raise energy to send healing to our friend Jean, who's going to go into chemo. Or we want to, everybody's bringing water from their local wells or their local rivers or their closest, waterways, and we're going to do a ritual to cleanse and connect all those waters and make plans to take something back concrete into the world that we're going to shape and change. Or, it's a hand fasting, or it's a funeral, or it's a celebration of Beltane, large gathering. Just as long as everybody's kind of on board with what that looks like and what's going to be hopefully expected of them, the more that people can get buy-in and understanding, the more they can add their energies and support each other. And that's important. And then if you've done a whole lot to bring in things, it's not that you have to back out exactly that same way. There are times when the devocations seem like re-invocations, and that's kind of a mistake because everybody ends up just as tranced out at the end as they were at the beginning, and now they're out of circle. But you also don't want to just cut people off and not put a bracket, not put an ending to your rituals. So again, there's a lot more to be said about that, but I felt like I wanted to talk about it a bit because it would be something that you would be getting to practice. I think in the homework we're asking you to take on being a part of a ritual or creating a ritual in your home communities in the next, I can't remember what we said, 6 months, 3 months, 12 months, I'm not sure, but would really recommend you try that, even if it's just with 2 friends, because it really, if it is an experience you've had, is not an experience that you've had, it's illuminating. And it lets you really work some of this stuff. I guess the last thing I want to talk about is just general inspiration. I know when I have done the work of grounding and getting enough food and sleep and aligning my chakras and listening to my spirit guides and doing my tarot and, all those, whatever needs to come into alignment for this all to work. There are times when I just know what I'm supposed to do. And there's those moments of clarity, that feeling, that gut feeling of turn left, not right, or keep going, or stop, And I think the more clear you can be, the more you can use these elemental tools and other magical tools. Pentacle of Iron is great. The more you can do chakra work, triple soul work, yoga, the more you can get cleaner and clearer about who you are and what you're doing, the more spirit can, your higher self, your divine self can actually communicate with you, and the more you can actually listen and hear and understand. And, certainly most people who are walking around on this planet don't get that experience all the time by any means. But there's that place of this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's easy, you know, because you feel energized, even though the work may be difficult, and it just flows, and you go from point A to point B, and all the doors open, all the street signs point in the right direction. You just can do it. And that's when you know that the work that you're doing in yourself is aligned with the work of your spirit, of your soul. That's soul work. And if you can hit those golden moments now and again, it's amazing, and you will find you want more of them, and that's always good. So I guess that's all I really want to say about spirit right now. I'm going to post some other things from some other stuff around time a little bit more, and we'll kind of go from there. Thank you. Blessed be.